So welcome to this edition of PageCarton, where we explain the concept of PageCarton, and this is I plan to start talking about what happens inside PageCarton before now, but then this broadcast is facilitated, or let's say I brought it all up faster than I envisaged because Damilola Emmanuels, who is one big man in PageCarton community, requested that we needed to have some form of understanding of how some things run in PageCarton. For instance, he was trying to understand how we could merge some of the updates he has made to the core to PageCarton, and how what really happens when a user wants to probably download PageCarton. How is the file structured? So I'm gonna be talking about I'm gonna be answering some questions about, okay, in two dimensions actually. The first dimension is answer the question of what happens when, what happens when PageCarton is being installed, what happens when a user requests a PageCarton site, or the question of how is this, how is that, how is the file structured in PageCarton, how is the teams how is this team integrated with PageCarton, how is the plugins, how does plugins work, so things like that are the things that I'm going to be questions that I'm going to be answering. But basically this explaining concept of PageCarton is targeted at people that want to contribute to PageCarton so that you can understand what PageCarton is all about and then how it works. So you should understand how PageCarton works when you know what happens in the background, or how the codes and everything, how all the pieces come together to become the powerful tool that will call PageCarton today. So to go straight to the point, if you are new to PageCarton, you can go to PageCarton.org. That takes you to the home page of PageCarton, where you can download PageCarton and check it out. So I'm not going to take so much time on this. I will just go straight to the point. I have a few questions to answer today, and basically I'm going to be addressing some of the issues raised, what happens when a PageCarton is installed. I'm meaning to talk about that, and one other, what happens when a user requests a PageCarton site. I'm going to take you through the chunks of codes that the whole thing goes through, and how PageCarton decides on how the page is going to be served. And then maybe when a contributor commits a file, and then how is PageCarton file structured, then how is the core updated, how is GitHub, how is Git linked to the update server and things like that. So I have this agenda drawn up. Let's go straight to the agenda of today. So a user normally wants to use PageCarton. They will come to PageCarton.org, and they are going to click the download button to download PageCarton. Now, there are a number of versions that is listed on the download page, and there is a place where they can download the latest version of PageCarton. So now I'm trying to explain what happens when PageCarton is being installed now. Okay, so a user come directly to pagecarton.org to download, and they download the source code, or let's say the installer file of PageCarton. When they do that, when you click on download the latest PageCarton, or you click on any of these ones, which is some of the stable versions of PageCarton till date. So let's say I click on download latest version. It is going to request the latest version of PageCarton from the server, which is coming up as PageCarton 1.8.32. It's a zip file, and when this download comes in, we are going to inspect the folder. Actually, we're using GitHub to for collaboration. So if you go to GitHub, the PageCarton repository on GitHub, actually what this thing, the download coming out now is a replica. We're downloading a replica of the GitHub repository. So, but it is not coming directly from GitHub. It is coming from the update server, PageCarton update server, which is about update.pagecarton.org. Now, before the server sends the content to the user trying to download it, the server will pick the latest content from GitHub that is committed, or let's say pushed to GitHub. So it is going to take that content and then zip it up in a way that is going to be easy for the user to unzip and then begin to install. So that file that does that is the get installation file in PageCarton. I'm going to tell you how to locate that file in a bit. So because if you see, if you take a look at where the file is coming from, copy download link, you will see that it is actually requesting the file from updates.pagecarton.org, and it is requesting for this widget in PageCarton, which is application backup get installation. Now if I look at the get installation file, my VS Code is still trying to come up. So I want to show you the GitHub repository. If you're new and you want to contribute to PageCarton, you can go to the GitHub repository and then look at the code. So now this is the file. Basically, your PageCarton contains this core file. This is the main thing. Like even the public.html does not mean much. It doesn't really get copied. Just to show you what kind of what files that would eventually be copied to your web root or what you can. So this is when you try to install PageCarton, the system basically copies this file, and then zip it up and send it to the user. I'm trying to look for the get installation file. The get installation file is going to be in the core application. Yeah, it's in, you see, it's in core, PageCarton core application modules, application backup, get installation. So if you have PageCarton cloned to your local directory, you can see this file. So what happens is that this is the file that gets the installation file, and you see it actually picks the archive from GitHub. It fetches the links directly from GitHub, and it catches it, like it saves it on the server, so it's not going to be picking from GitHub every time. There is a there's an automated, I can't remember what they call it now, all those callback thing that when a user when a contributor pushes to page to the GitHub, the update server is updated immediately. So it is always like automated. When you push something to GitHub, it is updated in the on this server. The get installation is pinged so that it updates it, and then so that when the user comes, they always get the fresh content from the server. So this get installation opens zip. It had this installer to it. This is actually the installer, which is a tar file. It adds it to the zip. He also had some file like you will see it speaking. It is speaking. Okay, not here. So this section here. This section here, over all this section here, is what happens when somebody pushes to GitHub. So this is how PageCarton builds the installer. Everything inside this if statement, PageCarton builds the installer and save it somewhere. Okay, so from here now, PageCarton is trying to send installer to the user. So he's trying to build a zip file. So he has this PC installer here. PC installer is inside documents. I'll tell you where the file is located. So it's adding the PC installer. It's adding another file, PC redirects. It's adding the PC installer, the archive installer. Then it is adding, this archive contains just the core. That's what is contained in this archive. Now this installer script is the file that is going to how do you unzip, like unzip this archive and then save it in the right directory. This is the controller. This controller is just that when a user copies the file into the web root, this index just contains files to redirect a user to the PC installer automatically. Then all these files like change log, copyright, they are just added to the zip file. So the essence of this get installation is to package the installer file, or let's say the zip, to contain all the files that is needed to install PageCarton, and then they just sends it to the user. It's pretty much simple, and so that is what happens at the side of the update server. This thing is saying low battery. I need to fix it. Okay. Okay, not okay. Okay, so excuse me. So we also have after this is what happens actually on the server. There is more that happens when, by the time the thing gets to the user. I'm going to show you what the user will see. Like I said, the zip file contains all this information. This is how everything gets in, but everything that is getting in is actually located. It's actually located in PageCarton. You see that it's picking it from inside PageCarton. It's inside the application directory, changelog, application directory installed. So everything is inside the application directory. And so when the download comes in, it's coming in as PageCarton 1 point whatever whatever. Okay, the file name is set using the current PageCarton file. This is where it's set in the file name. So by the time I open this file, I'm basically going to see all of this information that is added. So I don't really, like, you see all these things is added in it. So when the user is expected to remove all this file and save it in their web hooks, which is their htdocs or public html or whatever that is, and they are going to run this file. Now mind you, I said this everything here is found inside PageCarton. The only thing that is automatically generated is this PC installer. And mind you, this PC installer just contains the core file, just the core files. That is what is inside this PC installer. So everything else is more like an helper. This index.html just contains the file that is going to read. This index.html is just like an index file that will automatically redirect to this PC installer if the user is not requesting the PC installer automatically. And all these changelog readme, they are just files that come with PageCarton. So I just want to go inside the PC installer for you to see, to ensure that for you to see that it's just the core file that is there, which you can also find here on the GitHub. There is actually a direct copy of what is on the GitHub that they get. So okay, now so you see it is everything inside the core. Let me show you the core on GitHub for you to see that it's the same. So application library local, application library local HTML. Okay, so that is what happens. Now let me show you. Oh my god, what have I been doing? Okay, I need to share my screen so that you can see my my file manager. Okay, I've done that now. So yeah, like I was trying to tell you that this is what happens when a user unzips a PageCarton installer. This is what they are going to see, which is basically everything the user. I was trying to show you this get installation file. I'm sorry, I didn't know that this thing was not showing. So the get installation file, what it does basically is to is to open the zip file and then grab this installer file, this installer.tar.gzip, which is this, and then it grabs the file. And then I was trying to say that this section, everything within this if block is where the system picks this the latest version of PageCarton on the GitHub repository. It picks the latest version of GitHub repository, and it saves it so that it's not every time that PageCarton try to pick from GitHub, so that the GitHub will not ban the server. So we also, now this is the file, this is the place where everything is being added into the zip. Just to see where we added the change log, see where we added the pcinstaller.php.tar.gz, see where we added the pcinstaller.php, see where we added the index.php. Okay, so index.php is actually this pc redirect.php. The PC installer is the PC installer.php here. I'm speaking it from the documents directory. Then you see this change log is actually picked from the same from the app directory, application directory, and all these other ones. And that is how we arrived at all this inside the installer that was downloaded. So, and we opened this to get this. You see, this is the content of the piece, this tar ball. This is the content, which is basically the content of the core. Now we open the core to see all this, that they are the same thing: application library, local HTML, application library, local HTML, and then all this backup information, change log, readme, which are here as well. So the content of this is basically of this PC installer is basically all the content of the core, which is the main content of PageCarton. That is where PageCarton is. But this installer is just to ensure that everything here sits where they are supposed to sit on the server of the client, or let's say on the server of the user. Then this index.php is just to ensure that the system redirects to this PC installer if the user is not directly accessing this PC installer. Then also this change log and readme, they are also part of the core, which is here. Everything is here, right here. So when the user now copies this and they run this PC installer, let me open this PC installer to take you through what happens when the user now installs. When the user installs the index, when they come to this, when they put all these files in their web root, and they go to PC installer.localhost or whatever their server PCs, they try to run this PC installer. They are taken through a couple of stages. Okay, the first stage is the user doesn't have a stage, like they're just coming in. They go through this default, there's a switch. So this default switch is what comes up first, and what it does is that it upgrades the installer. It will automatically upgrade this PC installer. So chances are that somebody just downloaded PageCarton and then the installation is old, and probably there's a new version of this PC installer on the server. So we want the system to automatically upgrade this PC installer by deleting this file and replacing it with the fresh version from the remote site. Now the remote site is actually the upgrade server. So what we're doing is that we are auto-generating this PC installer whenever the installation is first started. That is what is done. So when that is done, it redirects to the second stage. You see that through this location, header location, stage equals to start. Now stage equals to start, remember I said that we're using a switch. The switch is basically looking at this stage. Now the start is the first stage, and it's basically the welcome screen where it says PageCarton installation, and it's telling you to agree to terms and conditions and thereabout. Then when you click on it, it goes to download. The download screen basically is only going to run if this starboard is not present. It will try to download this starboard from the server. It tries to download this starboard, but if it is present, it will use the present file. So that means if you may just this PC installer.php is enough to install PageCarton so far if the server has internet connection. If you just copy this PC installer into your server and you don't have all this other tab, or the PC installer will install successfully if you have internet. So it's going to drag the main files from the server, and then when the download is complete, it will proceed to install. Now the install basically is what the install does is to copy some files for preservation, some files that we need to keep in the core, and then it goes to delete directory. So delete the next thing, it deletes the previous core from the server. It deletes the previous core from the server. That's the next thing. Then the next thing is it directs to extract the new core and puts it in the core folder. Now the folder, or let's say the directory this thing is installed on, is let me show you. Can I use this as an instance? Okay, let me use the live server as an instance. So this is a live server. I'll show you the PageCarton installation on it. And mind you, this PC installer is the same file that is used for upgrade. So the process of installation is the same as the process of an upgrade. The only difference is that there's no difference actually. It deletes the core, it replaces the core and all that. So this is a live installation for a site, and you see this is the PageCarton directory. This is the web root, which is public HTML. It has all these files in it, and then this is where I copy the PC installer and everything. And then when it is installed, it will install to this folder. That is one outside of the web root. That is where PageCarton is going to copy. It's just going to copy the core, this core, into this directory. It's going to create this directory if it is not okay, let me show you that. So the extract is extracting to this directory, and this directory, application directory, is this is the application directory, this. So it's extracting everything to this core, PageCarton core. This is the application directory. So once that is done, it will bring back the preserved file, and then it will put it back into it. Then the next stage is to do compatibility fix, which basically does some, if that is where we put, if this PC installer has changed significantly, we can use this part to fix some of the issues that may arise. Then we have install copy controller. The install copy controller, this is, we don't know where the web root is, or let's say we can only dynamically determine where the web root is. So there was no way for us to say that we want to get, we don't want to tell the user to copy any file or anything apart from what they did at first. So excuse me. So now the system will automatically copy the files from this local HTML, this local underscore HTML file. This is all the file that is needed to be copied to the web root for PageCarton to run. So the last stage is to get those files from the local HTML and to put them in the web root automatically and set the right permissions. So once that is done, the system redirects to finalize. Finalize is probably just deleting some temporary directory. Then install complete. Installation complete is to just display the complete installation to the user, like installation is like confirmation for installation. So this is where it checks whether the user has URL rewriting capabilities, and if they do, if they have writing capability, it will direct them to the server. It will just try to formulate their URL so that there won't be link break or anything. So then there is another case for self-destruct. If you want to remove this PC installer dynamically, you can just use the stage self-destruct, so it is going to delete this file automatically. So that is all what this PC installer does to install PageCarton to the server. So basically it's just picking the files, which is a direct copy of what is in the a direct copy of what is on GitHub, and then it is loading it on the user server. So basically the GitHub is where any file that is on GitHub is what the user will get when they install. So we have like two branches now. It's 1.7 and 1.8 branch. We are currently working on the 1.8 branch, so anything that we want to do, it's going to be picking from the 1.8. So when we upgrade to other branches, that is the branch that is going to be picking from. So that is how PageCarton installation works. By the time PageCarton is installed, now this is what you are going to see. You are going to see your web root, which is like this. All this is not going to be there, but you're only going to have this index.php, the .htaccess file, and then this web.config. This web.config is what makes it work on IIS, so that you can have the URL rewriting feature in IIS. This .htaccess is what ensures that if you have mode rewrite, Apache mode rewrite is for Apache. So when you have Apache mode rewrite activated, this is how you're going to get all those clean URLs on. So by default, we ensure that the system copies this information automatically to the web root. So all these ones are for multi-sites. So when you create a multi-site, PageCarton will automatically add a directory into the web root, and then it is basically going to add the same things that it added on this one. So except that it may just be a link. It's going to link the directory to this one. So that being said, that is what happens when you install PageCarton. Now, what happens when PageCarton is installed? That is what happens. I've used 30 minutes to do this. I hope it's worth it. So by the way, thanks to Damilola Emmanuel. He was the one that actually championed this. He wanted me to do this on video, so that he's going to put it in a proper documentation, so that it's going to be helpful to people that want to understand how these things work. So then the next thing is, what happens, how is the files structured in PageCarton? Let me answer that. Like, how is the file structured in PageCarton? Usually some of the things you want to understand when you're working with a framework or an open source application is that you want to know where to find any file you want to use, or let's say you want to relate with. So now when you install PageCarton, you've already copied the installation files to the web root, which is this place. Now, PageCarton will install outside of your web root to a folder called PageCarton, which is one way outside of your web root, and then it is going to install inside core. It's going to create a PageCarton folder, which this is where everything that's happening inside PageCarton is going to be. There's a folder called PageCarton that is going to be created. Then inside this PageCarton, you're going to have 3 files. The first one will be the core. The core is where the direct copy of the current GitHub file of PageCarton. That is actually where PageCarton resides. That is where everything that runs in PageCarton, that's where it resides. Then you have sites. Sites is where the content of your installation. Probably you created a page, the information about your installation that has nothing to do with the core, like everything you have added to the PageCarton site is in these sites. Then you have temp, which is a temporary caching mechanism. It can be it's for you to just store whatever information you don't want to be kept for long. The system automatically deletes the content of this temporary folder, so it's more like a temporary folder for you to store your cache of results, and then the system uses it for a lot of system caching mechanism. So now inside the core, actually this core is these 2 files, they have the same structure. The core is like sites, so you're going to see core. Now core has application, it has library, and it has local HTML. So when you go to sites, for instance, okay, sites now would have some folders that would be like the core. One folder is, I said they are content of what you have stored, but they are stored the same way this core is stored. So but all those sites may not have library, they may not have local HTML. They don't need to have local HTML. They don't need to have all this backup information or change log or license, but then they would have a folder called application. So if you go on sites, you're going to see all this. This one is an old file, so this is not relevant. I'm talking about, you're going to be seeing a file like default, which is, it's going to have application. Okay, now the application, we're going to the application now. You're going to be seeing databases, documents, modules, files, modules, pages. And when you go to core, you're going to be, and you go to application, you're going to be seeing almost the same thing. You're going to be seeing config, databases, documents, functions, modules, pages. These are the things you can also see under sites, under any folder that comes under sites. So I'm going to show you some examples of what I'm talking about. So look at this. This is a core directory. This is sites. This is another PageCarton installation. Look at it. This is the public HTML. Then this is PageCarton. Then you have sites. On the site, you see that we have default. This is actually, and then under default we have under defaults. Then we have these are some of the multi-sites that was installed under this installation. But the main thing you will see here is either you see application, which is almost the same thing as the core application here, Okay, so let me take you through the core first actually. So inside the core you have local HTML, which contains the contents of the web root. Then you have the file, the application, which contains one document. Document are used. It was supposed to be used for something, but it was never used. So that is config. Then pages. This is where page files are saved. When you create a page on PageCarton, it creates some files like some files where information about the page is stored. So we have more like the files are stored in there are three files that are stored, right? The first file is a data file. It used to be stored uh, as an XML file, which is data.xml. Later it was stored as XML. Later it was stored as a PHP file, which was more like it was storing the data of the whatever as a PHP file. But now it's being stored as JSON. So you find the information about um, the in three files. So there's a data file, there's an include file, and there's a template file. So the template file is what determines the view, like what it's going to look like. The include file is what determines or everything that has to do with codes and calculations and everything. So that's where all the codes for the page are run. So the include file is run first, then it sends the data to the template. This data is stored just for future use. Let's say you want to update the site, the data for the page is going to be loaded from this data page. So yeah, so other pages have their template and other layouts here. So you're going to be seeing a lot of, so all these pages are pages that come with PageCarton. Under after pages you see modules. Modules are where the widgets and applications, or let's say plugins or whatever that comes with PageCarton are stored. They are basically PHP classes. There are lots of them, like tons of them. You are going to see PageCarton plugins, or let's say PageCarton widgets in two locations. Either you see them in modules or you see them in library. So, but mostly the ones you see in modules are the ones that can be bundled as external plugins, and then you usually don't have anything to do with how PageCarton runs. So they are inside the modules. There are a lot of files like that in there in the modules. They are basically PageCarton widgets that is used one way or the other inside PageCarton. So now you have functions. Now this function when PageCarton started, PageCarton today is mostly object-oriented programming. But when we started writing PageCarton, when I started coding PageCarton, I still needed to use some procedural functional methods and all that. So most of the functions here are no longer in use, but there are still some old codes that use them. So that's why they are still here. So the system will load all these functions automatically, and that's why they are still there, because there are still some codes that uses them. And so now on the application you now have databases. Now PageCarton has an internal database system. One of the key features of PageCarton is that PageCarton does not require So the databases now, PageCarton has an internal database structure. It doesn't need for PageCarton to run. Other applications like PageCarton, when you are installing, they are going to ask you to enter your database information, like you're going to be using some MySQL or MongoDB or whatever DB you want to use for it to work at all. But PageCarton does not need all that. Everything that PageCarton needs. While PageCarton supports other databases, you can always connect your site to other databases like MySQL and MariaDB or any kind of database you want to think about. But you don't need to install any of those databases for you to begin to use PageCarton. So PageCarton uses an internal database system that is based on XML. It's very powerful database, and it's really powerful. So the files for those databases are stored here. They are basically XML files, and you can inspect them to check out how they are structured and how they are being used. Like, so they're basically XML files. So the databases are stored here. You can go through the database to find out how it works. So that is core for you. Core, as you see, is a site. Like, there's a site of core that every information that you have in the core is what it uses to run. So the same way, when you install a fresh version of PageCarton, it will create a directory called default under site, a site, and then default, which is like it contains the default site. Now let me look for a project that doesn't, like a fresh project that with all those directories intact. So now take a look at this site, for instance. Now go inside PageCarton and go in. Oh, this is not a fresh installation. Now, yeah, let's take a look at this one. So inside PageCarton, you have all the street, but then when you go inside sites, you're going to see default. That's what you see, because you that's what it's going to create. So this default is going to contain all the information of that you have added to the site. Now you're seeing application. This application they are the data, just like the data you have in the core. They contain documents, modules, files, pages, and database, just like anything you have added. For instance, if you have not created any page, this directory will not have any page. If you have not added any database, if you have not created any database, or you have not added any content to your database, it will not create this one. If you have not had any files, modules, it will not create this one. The reason the core did not have any modules is because it did not have any modules files, like your articles and all that. That is where they are stored. So that is why that one didn't have modules files. So now your documents are going to be here. So you see how few this document had. That means but you will have, every application would have its own document file, will have its own pages, will have its own databases as directory. Now inside this default, you should have extensions too. Now the core didn't have extension because there was no need to put extension in the core. There was no need to put extension in the core because we can always add it. Extensions are so that you can install. Extensions are basically plugins. If you've added any plugins into your installation, this is where they are going to be stored. Now extensions themselves too, they are like the core, the same file structures. The extensions too will have an application. The application can have its own pages, can have its own documents, can have its own databases. So it's a chain of your applications inside application. So your extensions themselves, they are applications that can have their own set of files structured in the same manner, in the same they have the same structure. So now if you have multi-site, your multi-site will be inside this application as well. If you inside the default application, or they can be inside this site. You can have your site here. You can create other sites apart from the default, and they are going to be here inside this site. Then your core, your temp, is where the cache and everything. So I talked about application, I did not talk about library. So your library is, I told you about modules the other time under application. The same thing goes for library. They serve the same purpose, just that we reserve this library for the codes that make PageCarton works. Basically, they are codes that make PageCarton works. There are it contains a lot of widgets. Basically, they are widgets and database tables, configuration for database tables, and then codes for database tables and codes for widgets. They are what is stored here. So that is how PageCarton files are structured. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was helpful. So then, what happens when a user requests a PageCarton site? What happens when a user requests a PageCarton site? Okay, so I'm going to take you through the index.php code. So when going to your web root, you will discover that you have just a few files there, 3. Basically, I told you what this web.config and then htaccess does. What they do basically is just to give you clean URLs, so that you don't need to have index.php in your on your links. So if these ones, whether they are there or not, they don't really matter. PageCarton will run. So what PageCarton needs to run is this index file. So basically, everything is rooted to this index.php, and this file is run every time PageCarton is requested. And what this one does is just to automatically detect what the user is trying to view. And it's just detecting, okay, is it browsing, what kind of parts is PageCarton is installed. It's going to detect where PageCarton is installed. It's going to detect, we're going to perform some upgrades if it's needed, and then it's going to define some constants, and it's going to define some constants, and when that is done, it's now going to run the application, which is this IOLA application, and it's going to run this method run, that is actually passing the job to this application window. Now then it gives the job to this guy. This guy does run, and the run is simply simple. What it's doing is that the run would first do cron, which is PageCarton has some cron feature to try to see if there are tasks to complete. That's the first thing to do. Then it will calculate the time it is taking the system to run, and um, okay, yeah, it's going to run the boot method, and it's going to, by the time after, it's just going to go through some of the files, and then the boot. What does boot do? Boot basically just sets some things in, put some things in place, nothing much, and then it records the URL, it gets it calculates what URL is being sent so that it can serve, it can display the right content. So it picks domain configuration, like site configuration, from site configuration from the application, the site configuration, so then it displays. Now the process of displaying is yeah, now the process of displaying is just to determine, is it a document or a page. If it's a document, try to download the document. If it's a page, try to display the page, try to view the page. So the view page is just going to calculate, okay, what page am I going to show this user? By the time it determines the page, this is the view, and if the page is not found, it will show this 404 page not found error. And yeah, remember I showed you some files in the pages directory. It shows you, I showed you the in application pages. Now the view is only trying to see if these pages are available here. It's going to ask me, do I have basically the two files? To view the page, you don't really need the data file. What you need is the template file and the include file. So the view, you will see that mostly it's asking me, do I have the page include file or do I have the page template file? So at the end of the view, you will see that it's, by the time it's getting here, it's telling me include once the include file, and when you are done, include the template file. Now once this two is run, the page is completed. So this include file contains all the information needed to load that page. This one includes all the information needed for templates to display the way it's going to display. So after all the files are run here, like everything that needed to be run is run here, this one just displays the template and it will retrieve the data from here and then display it here. It will distribute data from here and display here. So at the time you're done with that, you by the way, there's a restrict access function, a method here, which is called before, it is called somewhere here before, when a contributor commits a file, and are going to happen, how is the core updated, then how is the JIT linked to the update server. I spoke about things like that. So I'm also going to talk about the third section is going to be about explaining widgets, databases,